and they just don't understand the whole volume of actual tidal wave of opinion that's floating against them. Terrorism is just one example of it. And it's not difficult to get them across, and I think the US government, etc., should be actually looking more outwards to what's coming in from the third world that make poverty history and stop climate chaos and the amount of degradation in Darfur, for example, and water resources, etc. And reaching out more and understanding more rather than being, just an island. It's not. I think that's happening with Al Gore and Democrats. But it needs to. If the US supported Kyoto fairly quick, we would have an environment guaranteed. We were actually hitting the tipping points right now. And it requires a change in the system, the whole political system, how we make decisions, the economic system as well. What are the drivers of it? And maybe that's where others be moving around in circles. And we're like guinea pigs on a wheel, and we're slowly being tipped over.
Let me see if I can address some of your points. I don't share your view that the U.S. has been unengaged in climate change. As I mentioned, we've been working on it for years and years, and Al Gore, Vice President of the United States. So you obviously have very high-level interest. It's been going on for years and years. I would take issue with your characterization of corporations as being inward-looking and motivated by self-interest. I am actually a big fan of the corporations that, and many of them have, very enlightened views of the world. These are big corporations with a global viewpoint, and it's not, I think you have some extremely sophisticated people running these corporations, that they are well aware of the influences of development and the need for...
Could I just clarify? I never said that. I said there are people at the top who are enlightened. That's the system. If the system insists that you make profit by law, then you as a manager can't, and I've been a corporate manager myself, you can't actually, go against the system. And basically we should be looking collectively, mainly on the UN auspices, at the system itself. There's no point in sort of taking issue with one another. It's actually coming together and actually looking at what exactly the basis of these problems are. The system has worked to an extent, and we need probably a new system, a new look at the system to adapt the system. Because we are pushing models of competition towards China and India. I'm an Indian representative on UNDP, and a lot of us are losing our culture. And culture is a natural break on environmental degradation. It always has been. And this sort of political economic system that's come through, this traditional economic development, which has not got sustainability in it, it's not got environmental in it, hasn't got human factors in it, hasn't got cultural factors in it. And that is the problem. And that actually, it panders to people's self-interest, and it panders to greed, and greed causes consumption. And it's consumption. If we stop consumption tomorrow, we wouldn't have an environmental crisis. That's what it's about. We still have the effects of the previous years, but that's really what it's about, to stop the whole consumer consumption. So it's not just one person or different views, it's that we have to come together in a global compact, similar to IPCC, and actually look at the system itself. Because we're pushing the system, has been pushed since industrialization, and that really is the problem. It's consumption that causes environmental crisis. That's causing the environmental crisis. There aren't enough resources in the globe to actually support that level of consumption, and that's where this previous question has come from. China and India are actually quite responsible. They've had environmental projects for decades, 40, 50 years, long before Brazil has had Alcoa, which is ethanol based alcohol, and the US is just starting to take it on. So anyway, I'll let you answer.
Sure, you don't want to throw a few more factors in there?
No. What I'm trying to say is maybe we should be looking deeper in the system rather than...
I would simply say that in my view, the international system is evolving and adapting to conditions and inputs from various sectors. I don't see it as being imposing on anything. Rather, I see it actually empowering diversity. And I think the awareness of the sort of larger environmental goods, environmental benefits is something that's happening as we speak, and that the viewpoints that you're talking about of being aware of, kind of the larger context of a shared planet, the global goods of air and water, environment. These considerations, I think, are actively being built in, so that this, rather than sort of stopping the train and trying to rebuild it, I think that those kinds of adjustments are taking place as we're moving forward, and as we learn more about the system around, as the feedback mechanisms, political and otherwise, enter into the system.
Well, I think we have time for another couple of questions, but we should maybe start. We have that. Yeah, Ollie, go ahead.
Yeah, if I'm allowed a second question,
Please.
about the related issue of energy supply and the relationship that this has to environmental policy. When you look at developments within Russia and the former Soviet Union, and you look at the way in which energy policy is being designed there, and also the relationship between Russia and the European Union countries, can I ask you what sort of perspective you would take on that from an outsider point of view, and also in relation to the Middle East? How do you see environmental policy as relating to some of these wider debates about the conflict?
About the conflict.
Two big questions there.
Yeah. On Russia and its energy relationship with Europe, to me that basically seems as one of a provider and a consumer, and that's something that has to be worked out on a mutually satisfactory basis, and the political elements of that are, I think, a concern at this point of many folks in Europe. Have seen suggestions that energy is used as a political tool in some situations, and therefore I think that that relationship either has to be made to work to everyone's satisfaction, or other options that are more compatible with your own energy needs and policy needs would have to be developed. On the question of environment in the Middle East.
What does that mean? That last one, I mean, either it has to be mutually satisfactory,
Mm-hmm.
or we have to pursue options that are more in line with our policy needs.
Mm-hmm.
What, we invade them?
No, I'm not talking
No,
about
I know,
anything
but I mean,
military.
it leaves it up with, if it's not mutually satisfactory, what are you talking about?
That would be something that would have to be decided by folks here in the European Union. That might mean more use of renewable energies that are more guaranteed supply, that don't have as much dependence on pipe-in energy, things like that. I don't think there's anything sinister about what I'm saying. I'm saying if you don't want to buy it from the Russians because of one reason or another, you've got to decide what your choices are in that circumstance and move forward. If you're happy with Russia, if that's a relationship that works, fine. So on the Middle East, my job there was a multilateral environmental officer, and a lot of my time was spent on trying to bring Israelis and Arabs to the table over issues of environment, of research, where there are strong commonalities and a lot of mutual benefits. There are people of goodwill on both sides of the table there. I believe that